After the hospital incident, the unseen world grew quieter, but the human world did not. The young man began to notice patterns that had nothing to do with spirits. Cases reached him through ordinary channels: missing persons, unexplained suicides, families torn apart by sudden madness. No spiritual residue lingered at the scenes, no curses, no spectral fingerprints. Yet the outcomes followed the same shape: precision, timing, intent. This was not the work of wandering entities. This was human design. The realization unsettled him more than any spirit ever had. Spirits followed rules even when they broke them. Humans did not. Humans adapted. They learned. And the most dangerous among them learned how to weaponize the unseen without ever touching it directly. He found the first clear trail in a coastal city. A spiritual consultant, charismatic, well-dressed, endlessly charitable. He spoke of balance, destiny, and awakening. His followers adored him. Wealth flowed through his organization, disguised as donations and retreats. And everywhere he went, tragedy followed, but never close enough to touch him. When the young man confronted him, the consultant smiled. "I don't summon spirits," the man said. "I merely show people where the doors already are." That was the moment the truth became clear. This enemy did not control spirits. He guided humans into inviting them. Through suggestion, fear, and half-truths, he taught people how to weaken themselves, how to make bargains without understanding the cost. He never forced possession. He simply removed resistance, and the spirits obeyed. Because consent, even ignorant consent, was enough. The young man understood then why this enemy was more dangerous than any guardian-turned-wraith. Spirits could be judged, humans could be reasoned with, but a human who chose to become a conduit for harm, that was something else entirely. When the confrontation ended, the consultant did not fight. He bowed. "You think you're stopping me?" he said softly. "But you're late. The world has already changed." That night, the man disappeared, leaving behind no trace, no spiritual mark, no karmic anchor. Only followers who still believed. The warning came too late. As the young man traced the human enemy's influence backward, every path led to a truth the Hu clan had tried to bury. Not all fox spirits had agreed with the ancient promise. Among the Hu clan's elders existed a faction that believed the use of a human intermediary was a mistake, an erosion of fox purity, a surrender of autonomy. They had obeyed Lord Hu's decree publicly, but privately they prepared contingencies. The human enemy had not discovered fox secrets by chance. He had been fed them. One of the 9 ancestors had broken silence, not out of malice, but ambition. This elder believed fox spirits should rule openly again, not linger in shadows and contracts. Humans, in their eyes, were tools, temporary, disposable, weak. And the intermediary was proof that fox power could be diluted. The betrayal revealed itself during a conclave beneath the old moon, a gathering no human was ever meant to witness. The young man was summoned without explanation. When he arrived, the atmosphere was wrong. Foxfire burned unevenly. Tails remained partially concealed. No ancestor met his gaze directly. Then the accusation was spoken. "You have grown too independent," one elder said. "Your judgments favor humans." Silence followed. The charge was absurd and lethal. Favoring balance over dominance had become heresy. Lord Hu appeared last. His presence fractured the tension, but did not erase it. "You knew this would happen," the young man said quietly. "Yes, Lord Hu replied. "That is why you were chosen." The betrayal was not a flaw in the system. It was the system testing itself. The dissident elder stepped forward and revealed the final truth. The human enemy from Part 8 had been groomed as a replacement intermediary, one fully loyal to Fox Dominion, not balance, a human face that could rule without conscience. The conclave erupted, contracts flared, ancient laws clashed. For the first time in centuries, Fox spirits turned their power against one another. The young man did not intervene immediately. He watched. He watched Foxfire tear through illusions. He watched ancient vows break like glass. He watched what Fox rule would truly look like without restraint. And then he made the choice that sealed his place forever. He sided with law, not lineage. Invoking the original vow, the promise made to his great-grandmother, he activated a clause none of the traitors had expected, the intermediary's right to enforce balance upon the clan itself. Foxfire turned gold. The dissident elders screamed as their power was stripped, not destroyed, but bound, sealed away beyond reincarnation. Not death, exile from influence. When the conclave ended, the Hu clan was diminished but intact, and irrevocably changed. After that night, nothing could return to how it was. The human enemy remained at large. The Fox clan no longer spoke with one voice, and the intermediary stood alone, trusted by none completely, feared by many. Yet the balance held, for now. The young man understood the final truth of his path. Enemies would no longer come from one side at a time. They would come together, human ambition, spiritual hunger, ancient pride, and standing between them all was him. War did not arrive with armies. It came as silence. After the conclave, there were no open confrontations, no declarations of hostility. The spiritual world did not fracture overnight. Instead, it adjusted, quietly, methodically, like a living organism responding to a wound. And that was when the war truly began. No single enemy led it. There was no banner to rally under, no domain to invade. The conflict existed everywhere and nowhere at once, unfolding through contracts, belief, and omission rather than violence. Human ambition became the front line. Across cities and villages, small movements emerged. Self-help sects, spiritual awakening circles, belief systems that promised control over fate without responsibility. None of them invoked fox spirits by name. None of them appeared dangerous on the surface, but each one weakened the boundary between intention and consequence. People were being taught how to desire without restraint, how to make wishes without understanding cost. And every careless wish fed something unseen. The intermediary recognized the pattern too late. This was not corruption spreading upward. It was erosion spreading outward. Spirits adapted as well. Without a unified Hu clan to restrain them, lesser entities began exploiting ambiguity. They did not possess humans. They nudged them. They whispered. They waited for permission to be granted accidentally. No laws were broken. That was the problem. Balance was not being attacked directly. It was being redefined. The intermediary found himself overwhelmed not by enemies, but by decisions. Every intervention corrected one imbalance while creating another. Every judgment solved a crisis while feeding resentment elsewhere. There was no place to stand that did not tilt the scales. And for the first time, doubt returned. Not doubt in his power. Doubt in the concept of victory itself. He could not fight this war as he had fought before. There were no spirits to destroy, no contracts to sever cleanly, No single enemy whose defeat would end the conflict. To act openly would reveal too much. To withdraw would allow entropy to accelerate. So he chose a third path. He became invisible. Rather than confronting threats, he began reshaping outcomes, influencing events so subtly that even spirits could not trace his hand, closing doors before humans realized they had opened them, letting small losses occur to prevent greater catastrophes. This required something new, sacrifice without recognition. People he saved would never know his name. People he abandoned would curse fate instead. And the war continued. Late one night, standing alone beneath a sky without stars, the intermediary finally understood the shape of this conflict. This was not a war meant to be won. It was a war meant to be endured. There would be no final battle, no decisive moment, no restoration of an ideal past. Balance was not a destination, it was a process, constantly threatened by choice itself. And he was no longer merely its guardian, he was its burden. As dawn approached, he felt the presence of both human and fox, neither fully dominant anymore. The line between realms had blurred, not catastrophically, but permanently. This was the legacy of all that came before. A kindness made centuries ago. A promise kept too well. A world that now depended on someone willing to remain unseen. The war had no battlefield because it was being fought inside everyone. The day balance finally broke did not feel dramatic. There were no eclipses, no collapsing skies, no screams echoing across realms. It began with something far simpler. Nothing worked anymore. For the first time since becoming the intermediary, every correction failed. A sealed door reopened somewhere else. A contained spirit found a new host. A prevented disaster resurfaced in another form, sharper and harder to stop. Balance was no longer bending, it was fracturing. The young man felt it deep in his core, the original vow, the ancient promise, the accumulated weight of every judgment pulling in opposite directions. The system he had sustained through restraint had reached its limit. Too many humans had learned how to wish carelessly. Too many spirits had learned how to wait patiently. Too many fox elders had accepted compromise instead of unity. Balance was no longer being attacked, it was being exhausted. The breaking point arrived without warning. A convergence occurred, rare, unstable, catastrophic. A city where belief, fear, ambition, and spiritual hunger aligned at once. Not because of a single enemy, but because thousands of small choices had stacked together over time. The intermediary arrived too late to prevent it. The boundary between realms thinned until it became transparent. People began seeing what had always been there. Spirits walked openly through streets. Human emotions manifested as distortions in the air. Faith collapsed into panic. Panic turned into permission. The old rules no longer applied. For the first time in centuries, the worlds overlapped, not temporarily, but irreversibly. The Hu clan appeared in full force, not as shadows, but as what they truly were. Some sought to restore order. Others saw opportunity. The dissidents who had been sealed long ago strained against their bindings, empowered by chaos. And at the center of it all stood the intermediary, no longer able to hide. Lord Hu appeared beside him, his 9 tails dimmer than before. "This is the consequence we delayed," Lord Hu said. "Balance cannot survive forever when both sides refuse responsibility." The intermediary understood then. This was not a crisis to be solved. It was an ending demanding a decision no one else could make. There was only one way to stop the collapse. not by restoring balance, but by removing the structure that required it. The intermediary realized the truth that had been avoided since the beginning. As long as he existed, the worlds would continue relying on him to absorb consequence. His presence allowed humans to wish recklessly and spirits to wait strategically. He was not preventing imbalance anymore. He was enabling it. The solution was not another judgment. It was withdrawal, but not retreat, sacrifice. He invoked the original vow, not as beneficiary, but as executor. Drawing upon the promise made to his great-grandmother, he activated the final clause, the intermediary's right to dissolve the role itself. Doing so would end the bridge permanently. No more human intermediary, no more Fox authority in human affairs, no mechanism to correct imbalance quietly. The worlds would separate, not cleanly, but definitively. Lord Hu did not stop him. "You were never meant to remain," he said. "You were meant to finish what we could not." The cost was absolute. To dissolve the role, the intermediary had to relinquish everything it was built upon. Fox power, accumulated judgments, even the memory of himself as something singular. His existence would not end, but it would disperse. Not death, diffusion. As the ritual unfolded, Foxfire burned without flame, contracts unraveled, spiritual laws rewrote themselves. Across the world, spirits were pulled back into their domains, cut off from human belief. Humans felt the change as a sudden absence, a loss they could not name. And then it was done. The overlap collapsed. The city returned to normal, not healed but stable. The Hu clan withdrew fully, diminished yet free from internal fracture. No elder ruled openly. No fox walked among humans again. Balance no longer existed as a managed state. Only consequence remained. Years passed, the world continued. Humans still made wishes, but they no longer reached beyond themselves. Spirits still existed, but they no longer fed on human choice. The line between realms was thinner than it once had been, but it no longer bled. As for the intermediary, he did not vanish entirely. Fragments of him lingered in quiet places, in moments when someone chose restraint without knowing why, in instincts that warned against reckless desire, in the uneasy silence before a harmful decision was made and abandoned. He was no longer a being, he was a remnant of responsibility, and that perhaps was the only form that balance could survive. Long ago, a woman made a wish that asked for nothing. She did not know she was creating a chain of consequences that would span centuries. She only knew that compassion, when possible, should be chosen. In the end, that kindness did not save the world. It taught the world to stand without being saved. And what remained after fate was not peace or order or harmony, but choice, returned to where it had always belonged, with humanity. If you stayed with this story until the very end, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Because behind every ending, there is always another layer of fate waiting to be told.